the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. So the little insect at the beginning of this video, my wife and I were having a very intense discussion about rivals to a happy family, elements of contention that come into a peaceful existence. And I'll talk a little bit about one of my favorite books. And these are popular books. This is Robert Greene's War. Love this book. He also wrote The Laws of Power. And I pause there. He writes a lot of books. If you go to the Barnes & Noble, at Bridgewater Falls, there is an entire, across from the business books, there's an entire section of these Robert Greene books, this being one of the better sellers. And of course, he's well known for the 48 Laws of Power, a number of really good books that are meant for, I would say for the unsophisticated pursuers of power over other humans. These are the books that have kind of set the standard in the modern business world. Robert Greene's books, it's a whole series, and it's a whole rack. Across from the business books, it has its own section, and it's towards the front of the bookstore. You can't miss them. It's a whole section. Again, these are put out by Penguin. Big sellers, New York Times bestsellers, continuously year after year. And a lot of people who are in their power grinding years, their 30s and 40s, have read these books and apply them to business, and they build their wealth and fill their bank accounts and retire in their 50s and 60s, feeling like they're titans of industry. And I have to say all that because I have to talk about something very obscure. And again, I just remind everybody, I'll probably tell this story dozens of times over the next few years. But it starts with someone asking me, we were talking about UAPs and non-human intelligence and how it operates. And why, and they're good questions. Everybody's asking it. Why would non-human intelligence choose to rule from the shadows? And often when you're in strategies of war against opponents or people who have made themselves enemies of you, whether you choose it or not, if you're in their way, they're going to run you over. They're going to find you as you're either going to help them get power or you're going to be in the way of them trying to get power. You're either helping them or you're hurting them. And all you have to do is wake up in the morning and exist, and you're in somebody's way of obtaining power. So that's why these books sell so well. And I love them, and I've read them all many, many times. I kind of carry this one around with me all the times. I highly recommend it. I love Sun Tzu's Art of War. I wrote my own version of a strategy guide called The Gunfighter's Guide to Business. Not that it's anything all that different from what Robert Greene has done. Mine's more specific, more psychological than this is just observational, conditional strategies. There's 33 strategies of war in this book. It was called 33 Strategies of War, and it breaks them all out. They're really well done books. I absolutely adore them. And I went through this one, gosh, dozens of times, probably. I read a lot of books, and I read a lot of books many times over. And Robert Patterson's books are certainly ones that I return to a lot. And I think his 48 Laws of Power book is one of his best. And there's a lot of bottom feeders out there that read it and then use them in a very primitive way to again fill their bank accounts on very short-sighted objectives. All right. So when I talk about non-human intelligence, and I talk about my own UFO sighting, I think they have a lot to do with quantum entanglement, UFO interactions. I think ayahuasca use or other psychedelics are major contributors to communicating with, call them interdimensional beings. What did people, the Essenes of the second Temple period, what were demons? As demonology started to evolve out of the Second Temple period, the Essenes, Dead Sea Scrolls, early Renaissance, artistic efforts, the spread of Christianity, and the idea of demons taking people over and taking over their minds. I think demons. It's a surface level discussion. I don't think it takes anybody far enough to the real problem. And then that brings up this whole question of, well, why would, if they're so smart, which they obviously are, and I think that, and when I make statements like, well, the human race is probably the pets in a kind of a Truman Show that we all live in. For context of that, I would suggest the Dune books. Dune is a wonderful way to kind of get into this programming. But I think the best context for understanding where we're at was a concept created by 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is the book, the Arthur C. Clarke book. Of course, we know, everybody knows the famous movie. I think it came out in 1969. The special effects in 2001: Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick revolutionized movies. Became the special effects template for the Star Wars series back in the day, and this is all revolutionary stuff. But the big takeaway, when I go on and on about the shaman of Newark and the Newark earthworks in Ohio and the UNESCO sites, and what did indigenous people, how'd they learn all that crazy mathematics? The first thing I think of when I see the relic, and that's why I think it's such a shame for NAGPRA to give back Indian relics to tribes to destroy or rebury in the ground, because and they talk about magic. These objects have magic, and it's part of their culture. You got to get back to the tribes, because we took land from the indigenous people, and we have to, just like reparations for slavery, even though Republicans are who freed the slaves, somehow we're supposed to give back money in reparations to people for their slavery ancestors. There's a lot of things out there that are working in the background, and I look around, and when people say, well, why do you think the things you think? Well, I look around and I say, who in their right mind would come up with this stupid idea of transgenderism, the Rocky Horror Picture Show platform? Why are there assassins out there trying to kill presidents and trying to kill Charlie Kirk? Why is there this level of hostility? I don't think there's any government in the world that is smart enough to do some of the things, and it's not enough to blame the Soros, Papa Soros and his kid, little Alex. They're not that smart. Sherrod Brown and Barack Obama and Joe Biden, these are not smart people. They're used. Bill Ayers isn't that smart. Yet we're supposed to believe that he orchestrated this takeover of America through the presidency, and they inserted Obama. They slid him under the door, got him elected. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories out there. There's a lot of gaps in these stories. And I'm interested in the gaps in stories. So one thing that's always, I wouldn't say bothered me, but strategically, and I had a mechanism, and I think bless their heart for coming into my life. And for all the things that are going to happen over the coming months. Look, yeah, this is my book. I'm probably I think it's written too nice, so people who are familiar with this. The context of it is, I think Robert Greene in here is too nice to his enemies, and there's going to be a lot of things to come because I live in this world and I have for many years. But I am very grateful for some experiences, and when I tell this story over and over again regarding my upcoming book, The Politics of Heaven, where it's not the conclusion so much about non-human intelligence and their political order and how they use human benefactors to advance their plots and schemes. And I want to understand that, and I think my book is about the journey all over the world, studying cultures that have interacted with these non-human intelligence agencies. But what do they want? And so people ask me, well, if they're that smart, why don't they come out and run the world? Why aren't they president? Well, because they're pretty smart. And they want you to feel like you have autonomy, so you do what they want you to do. So if you feel you have upward mobility, the illusion of self-rule, the illusion of self-fulfilled prophecy, then you'll keep getting up out of bed in the morning and yearning for efforts that they benefit from. And I would say that a lot of that is tied to sacrifice. They love the blood and sacrifice of human beings for their own sustenance. They're not your friends. They're not your Steven Spielberg aliens. And I think you have to look at them as UAPs, non-human intelligence and its interaction and manipulation of the human race for many thousands, likely millions of years. I think when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, that there were non-human intelligence agencies working on Earth. They were present. They moved all over the solar system. And we're going to find relics of them everywhere for many thousands of years to come. So it goes back to my thoughts about Stanley Kubrick. Anyone who's ever seen Eyes Wide Shut and the occult practices of secret societies and how they work. If you've done any study on Jack Parsons and the occult, Aleister Crowley and the gang, you know a little bit. People are just now catching on to MK Ultra. I see all kinds of these testimonies. It's coming out on Capitol Hill now. Everybody's talking about it. You have to understand, we've been at war, not with each other. We've been cast against each other by these manipulators. So it's important to understand what their politics is so you can have a strategy to work against them. And just like, and I think he's great, Robert Greene in this book writes a lot of great stuff about strategy. And you have to know who your enemy is so you can have strategy against them. And there's lots of people, you may wake up in the morning and be totally out for a peaceful outcome. The enemies are going to come to your door, especially if you have something of value, and they're going to try and take it from you. There's no peace. And you can be a good Christian, and they're just going to put you up on a cross and kill you. All right, I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, that's not very Christian of you. That's not very Bible-believing of you, okay? You know, that's the world I live in. And it's, I know a lot of ruthless, terrible people. And I have over my life. And I have a very good wife, and she's kept me from becoming one of those types of people just by being married to her. It forces me to stay good and clean and righteous. But that doesn't stop the bad characters from coming to your doorstep. And I'll read a little passage that I tend to read a lot. I like it. I want to say I read this passage most every morning for breakfast. So my wife makes me breakfast every day. She gets up early in the morning and makes me bacon and eggs. Great little meal in the morning. Gets me started correctly. And I read Strategy 19 in this book, The 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. And number 19 says, and this happens whether you want it to or not. You might have a neighbor that wants to steal your wife from you, or they might be jealous of how well you cut the grass and they want your yard, or they want to do some passive aggressive thing to make your yard look uglier because they don't look so bad. All right, there's nothing you can do about people's jealousies or their desire to steal from you in some way. So that's why this is important. It's called, number 19 is the envelop the enemy strategy. The annihilation strategy. And it says, people will use any kind of gap in your defenses to attack you or revenge themselves on you. So offer no gaps. Okay, now I'll say, if you're trying to be friendly and cordial to other people and build bridges, if you have great strategy, you can defeat anybody anytime. And my strategy typically is I'll give people an olive branch. Here you go. You want to be friends? You want to go have some lunch and dinner? I typically offer peace first. Because going back to the ruthless angle, it's pretty easy to destroy anybody, multitudes of people, anytime you decide to. Especially when you think in these ways. People are pretty easy to destroy. Their strategies are. And this will fit into my statements about non-human intelligence. But I have to give you this. The annihilation strategy, okay? This is a real thing. And you can go out there and wear your cross and thump your Bible and tell them, well, I'm not going to participate. I'm going to be peaceful. Well, then they're going to come and crucify you, just like they did all the disciples, just like they did Jesus and many other Christians all through history. And a lot of people could say, well, that's God's will. Sacrifice yourself to a greater good. Well, there's still a lot of evil people out there, principalities, that are plotting the demise of the good. And I don't think it's good to let them win. I reflect on the Old Testament a lot, Yahweh strategies. I like Yahweh. And I like it when he talks about making a footstool out of the enemy. I'm not so crazy about Jesus and all his forgiveness. And people can say, well, that's terrible to say those things. Hey, it's war. Living life is war. And if you're in denial of that's on you. I'm trying to give you some helpful advice here. Because we're going to talk about non-human intelligence and its war against mankind. It likely had a lot to do with shaping mankind. But they're at war with each other, and there are factions of humans that have been created under their care that others are trying to destroy to get back at them. So that's when you talk about the politics of heaven. I want to know what the politics of all these demons, these spiritual entities, these UAPs, these non-human intelligences, what are they and why are they plotting and scheming against each other and using us as their chess pieces? Because clearly that's what's going on. We'll talk about 2001 Space Odyssey here in a second. All right, so I'm talking about the annihilation strategy in this great book. 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. The secret is to envelop your opponents, create relentless pressure on them from all sides, dismantle their attention, and close off their access to the outside world. Listen carefully. Whether you want this to be true or not, it's happening to you, I promise you. It could be a mother-in-law. It could be a rival sibling, fighting over potential retirement amounts. It could be a neighbor. It could be a political force. It could be your local school board council, your local school board members. It could be anybody. It could be somebody at your job, likely. Because when you have people competing over food in the dog bowl, of course, dogs are going to bite each other over the rights to have that food or to mate with a female or whatever the thing you're fighting over is. Whatever power or the perception of power gives people. And I say that the audience, even though I love the books, the Robert Greene books, I think the audience are for those 30 to 40-year-olds who aren't quite enlightened and wise yet. And they'll obtain that wisdom in their 70s. I know a lot of people who don't hit their wisdom markers until they're in their 70s and 80s, if they live that long. Most of them spend their 30s and 40s chasing ghosts of perceived power, and they use books like this to get there. But if you're interacting with people in those age groups, I can promise you they're employing, whether you want it to or not, they're employing these strategies against you. Make your attacks on them unpredictable to create Yeah, I do. I read this a lot. And there's parts of this because I'm in the middle of stuff right this minute. And I'm reading it thinking, whether it's other human beings fighting you or non-human intelligence fighting you, it's still strategy that's used against you. Finally, as you sense their weakening resolve, crush their willpower by tightening the noose. So it tells you, put pressure on them any way you can and choke them off until the noose is on their neck so much that they have no choice. And this is how this is your annihilation strategy. It's being done to, I would say, a large portion of the human race. And when you ask, why do you think that? Well, look how stupid some of the ideas are. And I think just because they're non-human intelligence and they might have technology beyond ours, it doesn't mean they can't be beaten. But you got to understand who you're fighting and what you have to do to beat them. And you have to understand what they're doing to you. So a non-human intelligence can manipulate your life in ways. It can break your cars. It can use your thoughts against yourself. It can pit your spouse against you. The weakness is you assume that your thoughts are your own, that your mind is your own. It's contained within your soul. Your spirit is, you have autonomy and governorship over it. And what we're finding out with the MK Ultra programs and many other things, especially through intoxication, when you see what is the rationale, why would there be political efforts to go out and destroy civilization through abortion, reckless COVID policies, and the COVID lies, election fraud, gender mutilation? Why would we have these things in our society, and why would there be political efforts behind them? Why would we have reckless sex? Why do they want us to be on drugs? Why do they want pot legalized? Think about what it does and turn off your mind. And then look at what the enemy is trying to do to you to get you more receptive to their strategies, to make it easier for them to put a noose around your neck and choke you off. Then finally here at the end it says, the best encirclements are psychological. You have surrounded their minds. So we assume, because we've studied all of our life, that warfare was done like the Battle of Troy, Napoleon, Alexander the Great. You destroy your enemy by capturing their town and forcing compliance. How did Alexander the Great build such a big, great empire? He didn't go in, rape, pillage, and destroy all the men, women, and children of every community. And the Bible's full of these battles where Yahweh said, hey, Joshua, go kill every last person in that town and don't relent one bit, or I'll be mad at you. Yeah. And Moses had to also. He had to kill hundreds of thousands of people. Innocent people, men, women, and children. Why was Yahweh so angry? Well, because we're talking about a spiritual war against principalities. And that's why I sat down and wrote a book. It's probably going to become a big series. I would propose that it will be a competitive series to what Robert Patterson has done, or Robert Greene. Robert Patterson. That's another guy. Robert Greene, what he's done with this series of books. And we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it turns out. It needs some sponsors. It needs people to back it who will believe in it. But my view on these things is to give people tools to fight the enemy. And who's the enemy? Well, you got to know who the enemy is first. You have to understand why you have to live a good, righteous life. And I would say that in my politics of heaven, I largely defend the Bible from principalities that have been trying to undermine it from the very beginning. Democrat Party, and this is why I've been pointing out lately, how academia has taken over archaeology, anthropology, the study of sciences, and now you have NAGPRA, which is academia with politics to actually erase the evidence as you find it. There's a lot going on, but for what reason? And then I point to the great relic found in Newark, the Newark shaman, and why that's significant, and why the idea of shamans existing at Newark is so important. So, because we're trying to figure out how these guys gained all this knowledge. Okay, so all this advanced mathematics. Who was whispering in their ear? And, you can go through history and mythology, and I would say the goddess Lakshmi whispering advanced mathematics into the ears of recipients in their dreams. Kind of gives you, if you look at the pages of mythology and you study it for what it is and consider non-human intelligence trying to advance the human race in ways it wanted the human race to develop. And yeah, they nurture us along and they hide in the background. And why do they hide in the background? Why don't they just come out and say, hey, I'm in charge? Well, I'll give you my example here in just a minute. I have been gifted with an opportunity to see something very traumatic up close, which I think through synchronicity was intended to get my attention so I could explain these things. And it could be good guys or bad guys trying to give me that understanding, but I will tell you that there has been a path. I like to think it's God, whatever you want to call God, Yahweh, the forces of good that exist outside our perceptual reality. I go to bookstores and I look around and there's a book and I'm drawn to the book. I've been picking up the books and then I've been following his breadcrumbs, and people who know me best know that I have been for about 4 or 5 years now, like the Richard Dreyfuss character from Close Encounters. And I will talk a lot about Jacques Vallée, the guy who studied UFOs, who was the French guy in the Close Encounters. The actual Close Encounters, he was a consultant on the film, so they made a character out of him. He's written a lot of really good books about this topic, and I think you have to go to him if you're going to start figuring out what all these government releases of UAPs are. You have to understand what's happening. And Jacques Vallée is a good place to go and start. And I will get deep into Jacques Vallée. But Steven Spielberg, because he was making a movie for the masses, did not go with what Jacques Vallée was saying. This is the real UFO story. This is what the little green men, the little dudes, Steven Spielberg made them cute. He's made them all cute. All his aliens have been cute. throughout the years. There were even in Crystal Skull, the Indiana Jones, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He made them like they're anthropologists just trying to study humans, and they're coming and going from dimensional space to study human history, and they're markers on the human race. Kind of having a little fun with the topic, but it's actually quite a sophisticated storyline, even if it comes out a little cheeky, and people didn't like that Indiana Jones movie as much as the other ones. I do like it. I think the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is pretty advanced stuff. It's dealing with elements, crystal skull culture that has been out for a long time that people don't really understand, and it's evidence of likely non-human intelligence leaving its mark behind. Just like I would say that the Newark earthworks have been. And a lot of scientists will say, oh, that's preposterous to take away the credit to indigenous people. Well, how did indigenous people get it? I say, well, they had shaman that were taking psychedelics or some form of marijuana. And again, going to Hindu culture, and we talked about Lakshmi a little bit, whispering in the ears of people, they consumed a lot of marijuana. Why is marijuana use being advocated? So that these non-human intelligences, I would offer, want empty vessels to drive. They want us to leave our cars on the side of the road, get out, vacate them so they can do the driving. You see it in intoxication. You see it at rock concerts all the time. I'll give a good example of celebrity, which I deal with celebrity discussions in my book, The Politics of Heaven. Did you go back and watch any Britney Spears videos? You see how Britney Spears is these days? She can't even do a TikTok video that gets anybody to, she can't get any viral videos. She's been, all the help she had is gone. You see how Katy Perry does all these, she falls on stage all the time anymore. The charisma has been taken from her. The elements of celebrity, Ozzy Osbourne had it. They went out and bit off bad heads and did a lot of crazy stuff on those Black Sabbath concerts. And Ozzy Osbourne lost it at some point in time. He stopped biting off bad heads and worshiping the occult. Kiss, Gene Simmons, they've all kind of dabbled with it, played around with it, tried to appease these. And you see it in the music industry repeatedly. Miley Cyrus for sure. Taylor Swift for sure, and of course Miley Cyrus. Of course, you had to have an old Disney character, Hannah Montana, corrupted and turned into an advocate for all that age group to want to go out, go to her concerts, get wasted, and have crazy promiscuous sex, which is to whose benefit? For the pleasure of it? Or is it because these non-human entities enjoy seeing humans deface themselves for all kinds of reasons? And I'll get to that in a minute. So I'm saying something that's really controversial. And people will say, well, it's rooted in high speculation. I say not. We all grew up watching 2001: Space Odyssey. We all know Arthur C. Clarke's book, and it was based on. And if you don't know how the movie was developed, Stanley Kubrick was very smart. And he developed the story along with Arthur C. Clarke. But in the book, the famous monolith is kind of a crystal statue that takes over people's minds, and it's actually manipulating people deliberately. And it goes into much more detail in the book. Whereas the book, like all things, books are usually better than the movies. In the movie, Stanley Kubrick made the monolith look more like our iPhones. Now, this is before there was ever an iPhone, but I find it not very ironic that the makers of Apple, again, Apple having occult references, people say that the bite out of the apple, stories about how it got there, but that the bite out of the apple signifies Eve eating from the first fruit. Well, the first fruit wasn't an apple, But most people don't know that, so you can have things in life that have double meanings. You can have a surface level meaning and then a deeper occult ritual significance. I am not surprised that all of our cell phones have evolved to look like Stanley Kubrick's monolith. Very sophisticated. And the monolith, of course, is a carrier of non-human intelligence into life forms to perpetuate themselves. In the book, the monolith is working as a data driver to actually download into subhuman consciousness what would become future tools of civilization. And the evidence of that, if you look at it from a science fiction point of view, there is some great science fiction written by these kinds of authors from the 50s to the early 80s. And it translates over into great films that people are having a lot of reverence for now. But, I grew up in this period and I've watched all that art go away. These bright minds, they were either killed, committed suicide, or went crazy. And they didn't make it very far in life. Stanley Kubrick famously had a heart attack after the final cut of Eyes Wide Shut was shown to the studio executives. And all the occult stuff was just too much because, it's essentially the Aleister Crowley cult of Pasadena, California, shown for what everybody knows it is. It's exactly the kind of stuff that the Charlie Manson family was participating in. And who were they doing it for? Jesus? For God? I make the argument for non-human intelligence groups. And I would say the CIA has had active communications, whether you're talking about Dolores Cannon or you're talking about Edgar Cayce or any other psychic, MK Ultra, which everybody's talking about these days on Capitol Hill. It's been around since the 60s. It's nothing new, and you don't think that they've evolved it further? So going back to the bug at the beginning of this video. All right, so my wife and I are having a very intense conversation about malcontents, and I was warning her of the ability of enemies. We all have enemies to jump into your thoughts or use third-party entities, non-human intelligences, to do their dirty work by getting them to harass you in the ways I said in that strategy, number 19 in the book. The total, the annihilation strategy. How do you annihilate people? Well, you overwhelm them. You get them to have personal family catastrophes. You find ways to drain their bank accounts. You get the spouses fighting over spilt milk, over where the magnet should be placed on the refrigerator. You put them through psychological trauma. Now, how do you get that to happen? And I told her, now insects in a house happen all the time. Not every insect is some maniacal vehicle of destruction. But I warned her in the kitchen. We were talking about some very sensitive stuff, and we do that every morning. She cooks me breakfast every morning, and we have our rituals, husband and wife rituals. And I'm at the kitchen table. She's in the kitchen. It's a big kitchen. And there was a house centipede above her head. Now, high technology it doesn't need to be anywhere present to like record you or eavesdrop on you. There's a lot to talk about these days. Big government agencies that have listening devices. Used to be you had to bug someone's apartment. You had to put like a little microphone, like one of these, in their receiver in their phone, and you could listen to what's going on. Back when the CIA set up Nixon, and yes, CIA set up Nixon to get rid of him because they didn't want to kill him. The way that JFK was disposed of, they wanted a cleaner way to kill him. So what they did was they used the annihilation strategy, which they had learned. The CIA had power of government behind it, so it makes the annihilation strategy where you envelop the enemy, get them all twisted in knots. They can't even think straight. You cut their access off the outside world through debate and distress, and then pretty soon they're going crazy because they can't think straight, and that's what you want to do. one of the means of psychological tortures. If you have someone, a prisoner, and you want to really kill them, you don't pluck their eyelids out or stick needles in their eyes. What you do is you keep them from being able to sleep. Every time they start, they are exhausted. They've been up for 50 straight hours. They haven't eaten. They haven't drank any water. The worst thing in the world is to be under those conditions and then still be kept awake. And they try to nod off. You come up and slap them beside the face. You make loud noises so they can't go to sleep. Keep them awake, and they're dying to go to sleep. You can stress people out and drive them crazy, and it's a strategy. It's called the annihilation strategy. And I would argue that the non-human intelligence is at war with the human race because it looks like factors of other non-human intelligence has had an impact on the human race, and they want the human race to do well. And you have factions that are fighting against those factions by trying to destroy the human race for all kinds of reasons. And everybody's trying to make deals, and everybody's trying to make appeals, occult rituals. And I started talking about Britney Spears. The Britney Spears is trying to do TikTok videos these days, and she can't even dance. I mean, she looks like a fool. That's not the same person that danced on a stage with Michael Jackson many years ago, and was a center of the pop culture. Look at Madonna these days. These people are used, and they are given celebrity status in ways that our minds are either turned on or turned off to them by something. And if you eat some bad heads on stage and do some occult references that they're happy with, and I would say I accidentally conjured up a UFO. That's why I think that I kind of understand this a little bit. And I was, I went through, not purposely, I went through kind of a Jack Parsons conjuring up of spiritual entities, and a UFO showed up somewhere right a day later. Then I called it out, but it came to the exact place I told it to. So, yeah, I have enough experience with this stuff to kind of say, okay, there's something weird about it. What is it? And how do you fill in the blanks with it, with logical science? And so for me, the mechanism that brought intelligence, that non-human intelligence that may not be confined to the 4 dimensions of our life, length, width, height, and time. They might live in a 5th, 6th, 7th dimension outside those constraints. And the only way they can interact with us is to put something like a monolith into our world. And all of a sudden a monolith is sitting at the foot of your bed, or it shows up in a desert somewhere, or it shows up on the moon. And Stanley Kubrick made it nice and, very shaped like this, because it was easy to film, and he put some sound effects behind it to try and evoke what this book was trying to say about it. You can do a lot of explaining in a book, talk about how psychologically the monolith was affecting male primates into learning to make tools, and how dreams were given inputs, or how spiritual entities who couldn't quite live in our dimensional reality but have a political desire for outcomes in our dimensional time and space, our lives matter to them in ways we don't quite understand politically. So why do they hide out in the background? Well, because you get more control if you're not known. Because you have the annihilation strategy. What's not known, what goes on behind closed doors, behind locked doors, behind dinner conversations where you're not present. What happens at those could drive you mad if you're trying to worry about what they're thinking of you. So just trying to chase that down is a form of annihilation strategy. All right, so I think the monolith is important. How information is brought into civilization. How do we cascade knowledge? How would an intelligence that isn't quite working in our terrestrial existence communicate to us? Now, when you break down human communications, we're motivated through reproduction, the desire to live life, eat, sleep, drink, consume entertainment, the things that we consider to be life essence. But if you control the food that goes in the dog bowl, you'll be able to get the dogs to either listen to what you say or bite each other on command, depending on who's supplying the food, who supplies the tools that drive intellect. And when something like a monolith shows up in your society, and I'll tell you a story about this in a second. I had a really good discussion with the one of the staff people at Barnes and Noble in Westchester. Very, very nice lady. We were talking about. So I was looking for a book. She didn't have it, of course. It was a Jacques Vallée book, a little obscure title. And of course, I didn't think they'd have it, but we started talking about monoliths in society. We were talking about 2001 Space Odyssey. We were talking about things that come into our society that give information forth. I would say the Newark earthworks are symbols of non-human intelligence that interacted with a group of people at a particular time and gave them, through their shaman, advanced mathematics to advance culture in some way. And the shamans of all societies all around the world chronicle this by showing shapeshifters. In the case of the shaman of Newark, that shaman piece is a human being either converting into a bear, wearing a costume of a bear, or turning from a bear into a human. But it's metamorphosizing into something else. And this idea of these Indians that are out there doing these dances and trying to be animals in the process, or morphing into animals, or becoming or going from animals to humans. There's a lot there you have to look at from the perspective of a monolith in our society. And as a work of fiction, 2001 Space Odyssey, you have to have some mechanism to articulate what's really going on in a way that's simple. And it's pretty complex in here. The monolith is an actual kind of vehicle, a radio device that can tune into the consciousness of living things and advance them, or give them programming that advances their society. Not necessarily in a way it's good for society, but it's good for the non-human intelligence that's giving the programming. When you program your computer, or you program a new video game, everybody's concerned about AI. I would argue that AI has been built and formulated to represent not human intelligence, but non-human intelligence. And that the big fear we have in the back of our minds is that they'll develop a strategic affinity with it against us, instead of us using it to fight them. And I would argue that strategy, and you can beat the non-human intelligence at their own game, which is where I'm at. That's one of the reasons I wrote The Politics of Heaven, to understand the politics of these non-human intelligences. And to do that, you first have to admit you have to know who they are. So I would say my book, The Politics of Heaven, identifies their patterns through time and history, or all over the world, so that you can begin to accept the foundation argument that they exist, which is why people are so stuck on the UAPs. We don't know what to think about the UAPs because we thought we were the top of the food chain. Well, no, human beings have not been the top of the food chain. Never were. We were made to do the deeds of those running the Truman Show, and we're on our own little Truman Show. And I think the Dune books come closest to understanding how humans obtain knowledge and get programmed, not necessarily computer programming, but programming biologically and consciously. And when you see this obsession that the Hindus have about consciousness, Vishnu consciousness, and you study religions and their motivations, you can start to see how monoliths emerge in our society. And I'll talk about the nice lady at Barnes and Noble. So I was there looking for a Jacques Vallée book, and they didn't have it, but she and I got talking about the monolith and what a brilliant fictional device it was, not just in 2001. It's what made me think about pulling the book off the shelf to talk about it. Arthur C. Clarke. And then how it got adapted to Hollywood by Stanley Kubrick understanding, well, a crystal monolith isn't going to translate very well on film. So let's make it black and solid. And then the image will cascade into culture, and then it will become your future cell phones. The cell phones are acting like monoliths because now you have AI. You can talk to it. It can talk back to you. Cell phones always spying on you. There's a lot of testimonies right now that MK Ultra knows how to program the cell phones to actually provoke thoughts in your mind to get you to do things. Hey, and now I'll go back on, this isn't new for me. I wrote a book in 2004 called The Symposium of Justice. And I had in the local water tower of towns a mind control device called the Veil of Knowledge. And this is before I knew all this other stuff. This is a fictional device, kind of like the monolith and Arthur C. Clarke's book. And the design was for governments to be able to inspire economic activity in their cultures by having a vibration that went out from these water towers to the population around the community. And it was this one particular community was a test bed for it. And the hero of the story is trying to put a stop to it. Anyway, the point was to affect the pituitary gland of the human beings. This is 2004. To affect the pituitary gland and get people to go out and spontaneously buy cars and clothes and get economic stimulus because the sexes wanted to reproduce with each other. And they were reacting to the pituitary gland, which was inspired to go out and be excessively sexual. So that you would go out and buy cologne, buy deodorant, buy new clothes, new shirts. You would try to attract the opposite sex. That was mind control to try and affect the mind. So now we're finding out that MK Ultra did advance. It ended up in cell phone technology, and that your cell phone spies on you all the time, and it actually broadcasts information to you. That's the accusation. Now it's a little more a conspiracy theory because we have congressional testimony starting to talk about it. Nancy Mace. And people could say, well, that's kooky, that's crazy, it's conspiracy. But I've seen weirder things happen. And the thought now is that in your cell phones, there's ways, whether it's the colors on your interface, it's the way that you take pictures, and AI studies the pictures you take and it learns a lot about you and builds a profile about your life, studying your pictures that's on your cell phone or it's on your iCloud account. Whatever the mechanism is, the cell phone probably isn't your friend. It's probably spying on you and influencing your mind. It knows what you're looking at with your eyes because your thoughts are not sovereign. And it may not be the NSA looking at it, may not be the FBI. The CIA may only have very limited knowledge. It has some because it's been working with these non-human entities for a long time. So much so that they tried to use the same mechanisms of concealment as part of an annihilation strategy on the human race to conceal election fraud in 2020 and the COVID cover-up, the Wuhan virus in China. They lied right to our faces, and that's why these conspiracies are now coming out in droves, because we figure, well, the experts lied to us once. They probably lied to us many times over. So let's question everything now. So now you have a flood of all these conspiracy theories coming out, and the government saying, okay, to put some of the genie back in the bottle, we're going to tell you what we really know to hope you earn your trust back. So here's some UAP files. Yeah, we have some UFOs. We can't explain them. We don't know. Yeah, here's some evidence of some stuff, and here's some congressional testimony we tried to cover up. Here's some pilots saying, yeah, we've interacted with these things for a long time, and they play with us like we're toys. What is this non-human intelligence? And I see in archaeology all the time, and you study in mythology, evidence of these footprints going through the paint. And if you assume they're just fictional narratives like Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick writing a fictional story about the Odyssey, or the 2000 2001 Space Odyssey, or Homer, the Odyssey, whatever the fictional narrative, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Pick a work of literature, and you can say, well, it's fictional, meant to be a plot device to drive human imagination somewhere. Why were humans desiring to consume those stories? Well, that's this whole monolith thing. There's lots of ways that non-human intelligence have devised to communicate with human beings, through dream, through drugs. In the book 2001 Space Odyssey, from the beginning of time, non-human intelligence was manipulating conscious species through mind manipulation, through the monolith. And we found monoliths all over the solar system, the moon particularly. I think we're going to find that kind of archaeology on the moon, on Mars, on moons of the Mars, moons of Jupiter. We're going to find it everywhere. Just like people try to say, well, the indigenous people were destroyed by that evil, nasty America. And look what we did. They were geniuses. They made all these mounds. Well, there isn't anything in those mounds that says that they inherited all that information. They were given that information from something, likely from shaman use, the same consumption of drugs in the temples, the high places, temples of the land of Canaan that Yahweh wanted destroyed. They consume marijuana. And there's high place, holy of holy sites where obvious marijuana consumption was done, not to the Canaanite gods, but to Yahweh. So the high priests were smoking dope and trying to communicate with non-human intelligence. Let's call them, you call them demons, you can call them spirits, you can call them whatever you want to call them. We're getting to know them. And my point in writing The Politics of Heaven is to get to know, to get to admit that they exist. And I do talk extensively about my experiences in Japan. Hoshino Hiden, the site there, it's supposed to be 14,000 years old. And, Graham Hancock's done some great work of lower sea levels. And if you go out Osaka Bay, go way off the coast, there's a lot of Hoshino Hidens, ancient rock carvings everywhere, and no one understands them. They're dating back to 14,000 years, people think. And they would have to be in that age group in order to have archaeology off the coast of Japan. But forget about that. They have kami, references to kami all over the place, spiritual deities. They worship a spiritual deity in just about every aspect of nature. And when you're walking down the street, which I have many times in Kobe, and you go to get some noodles down at the noodle shop, or you go to Chinatown, or you're walking around the wet markets, and you're enjoying sophisticated Japanese society. Well, they always do a nice job. They're very nice there. You can walk around 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's not a lot of crime. People are very respectful in Japan. Good culture. But they have Shinto sites set up everywhere, where they burn incense and pray to these kami to appease them. And their version of the kami are a lot like Indians in North America. Spiritual entities they're worshiping all the time. And the common thread is finding some way to interact with the spirit world. And they do it. Shinto religions do it all the time in Japan. It's very out in the open. You can't go anywhere. Can't even go down to McDonald's and not smell incense burning on a street corner from some Shinto shack where people stop and pray to the kami to give them good luck, or don't give me any bad luck. Please don't inflict an annihilation strategy on me. Give me good luck. Let me get through the day. And often, and this is what I'm building up to, it's a rabbit hole. I knew we were going to have to go down a rabbit hole. So I was talking to this nice lady at Barnes & Noble, and we were talking about the monolith from 2001 Space Odyssey, the difference between Kubrick in the movie and Arthur C. Clarke in the book, and the sophistication of that device. And I pointed over to the Star Wars section in fiction, because we're in the science fiction area, headed towards where Jacques Vallée should have been. And I pointed at the Star Wars section, and there were probably 50 books of Star Wars on the shelf. And I said, look, before Star Wars came along, Star Wars is kind of like the monolith. There was a lot of science fiction concepts that were introduced to the human race through the popular means of a film like Star Wars. It got people thinking about space being ancient, galaxies being far, far away, this idea of the Force. A lot of people don't know it, but the Jedi are, especially in England, are forming their own religion. The premise of the Jedi Knights in Star Wars have made their way into actual people celebrating it as a religion, just as much of a religion as Aleister Crowley and his occult in Pasadena, or L. Ron Hubbard and his Scientology, or the Mormon religion. There's a lot of religious influences out there. And I often will say the Kaaba stone in Islam is a kind of monolith. No one knows where it came from. It looks like it came from space. It's kind of a black object, kind of like what Stanley Kubrick showed in 2001 Space Odyssey. Again, that's a work of fiction. But yeah, you have all these people that make their pilgrimage to Mecca to try and touch the stone. They're in Mecca. It's kind of, in their culture, it's kind of a spiritual communication device that has given them a feeling of acquiring divine knowledge. And it could just be a couple radical teenagers, interdimensional beings that are hanging out in UAPs harassing mankind because they have been around longer, have more advanced technology, and they aren't confined to the imprint of our dimensional reality. But you can, just like humans might interact with a two-dimensional reality or a one-dimensional reality by sticking their finger in the middle of it, and they might see just a slice of that reality, those dimensional beings. Same thing going on with us and interacting with strange dimensional characters. So she and I, the Barnes & Noble lady, and I were talking about monoliths that happen in real life, and I used Star Wars as a fictional narrative that showed up. And I said there's a lot of people talking about elements of science fiction, elements of space travel. Look, SpaceX named their rocket after the Millennium Falcon. Their Falcon Heavy rockets are named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. And when I was visiting down to see the Blue Origin stuff at Cape Canaveral, they're naming their rocket "Never Tell Me the Odds," which is a saying that Han Solo said in The Empire Strikes Back when they were navigating the asteroid field. So what you have are these people who, as kids, enjoyed these movies. They were like the monolith. They came and gave big ideas to children in a darkened theater who had a collective experience with other people in the movie theater. People laughed, cried. They were energized by what they saw, and they were given information. And they took that information and they developed a new space economy. But where's all that come from? Well, I think non-human intelligence has been fighting against each other, and we have been the battlefield for a long time. And we don't always know it. We've chronicled these battles in Greek mythology, Roman gods, through Sumerian texts, certainly in India, around the formation of the Hindu religion. The Bible records a lot of paranormal occurrences. You see it all over the world. And these things might only happen every 3,000 or 4,000 years. The Second Temple period of scenes, we're talking about in the book of Revelation. The apocalypse, we're all looking forward to resurrection and those kinds of things. We all kind of share the beliefs that Earth's going to go through cycles of destruction and regeneration, and we play our part in that. But more and more evidence is coming that you have non-human intelligence been manipulating things behind the scenes from the very beginning. So how do I know that? Okay, so I've been thinking about this for many years, 3 decades or so. Obviously, I talked about the book I wrote in 2004 about manipulating through water towers, signals that manipulate the pituitary gland and get people to go out and buy stuff. And is that happening now through MK Ultra techniques in your cell phone? Probably. I can see it. I can see the market desire. I can see the private industry working with these big government agencies to have control. We saw that kind of relationship make an attempt to have a changed economy with the World Economic Forum and their Great Reset with COVID. We saw a corporate partnership with government, global government, ways we've never seen before. We've seen this push for socialism and Marxism. Why do you want that? Same reason corporate cultures all want it. To get control over a culture and influence them with very minimal people running everything. It's why Marxism is so attractive. It's why communism is such a threat. It's why China tries to mock us and our capitalism and our system of government by saying, look, we got a few people at the top that make all the decisions and everyone falls in line or we kill them. They don't have a choice but to follow. And that's the same thing that goes on in corporate culture. So I've had the benefit of having a front seat of a hostile takeover. And hostile takeovers, and I can tell you, because I've talked to several people in the legislature in Ohio, there's wording for future billing going through the circulation right this minute. This is middle of 2026, because after COVID, banks took advantage of cash-strapped, privately owned companies and squashed them so that hedge funds and private equity firms could come in and buy up the hard work of all the mom and pop shops out there. And, a good friend of mine is one of those mom and pop shops. And they found themselves having their company stolen from them because of depleted financial resources, because there wasn't any law in the books to do it. And they, so they took advantage of a detrimental situation. They used enveloped strategies to take private ownership and convert it into private equity and investors who kind of sit around, and anyone who gets in their way, they apply this annihilation strategy. You know why? Because this is all the talk in New York. You go to Wall Street and you talk to all the headhunters, the killers, the sharks out there, the people who put career over everything in their life, including their spouses. They're often divorced many times over. It might take them 2 or 3 times. I would say Trump was one of those guys in his 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I think Melania, I think 2 things happened to Trump. He outgrew that period of his life and became sort of wise because he survived long enough to get some wisdom. And I think he married a good woman, Melania, and I think she helped him out. Didn't happen overnight. It happened over a long period of time, but a lot of people are going to get there eventually. But they're reading these books, and the hedge fund guys who are looking for easy money and easy retirements, or trying to make their money off very profitable companies. And the problem is, and you see it in the supply chains everywhere these days, that private ownership used to drive it. You could call up the owner and say, hey, Mr. Owner, Mrs. Owner, I have a problem. Can you pull something in for me? Yeah, I'll get right on that because we value you as a customer. Now it's a bunch of nobodies who only work 15 weeks out of the year. They spend most of the year in their 3rd or 4th homes all over the world. They probably hang out in the Bahamas or Florida or some exotic place most of the year, and they're living off investments. And they squeeze people. They come in and take over these management systems. And I've watched this happen right up front. And they employ the annihilation strategy. But how do you think they get away with it? Okay, do you think they come in and say, do you think they buy the companies? They first of all use the banks to strangle the companies, and then they come in as private equity firms. They hire people to come run their managements because they don't trust the previous management, the ones that made it successful to begin with. They want, of course, their own management systems. So they come in, they squeeze out the old guys, and they bring in the new guys, and then they employ the annihilation strategy to do it. So one thing they do is they come in and they don't, just like if you're going out to try and if you've ever went out cow tipping, you don't go out there and mount yourself and scare them, or go duck hunting, or turkey hunting. If you've ever seen people who go hunting for stuff, they come in camouflage, they sit in a tree stand, they try to put scent out that covers up their scent because deer can smell you from really far away. They try to mask their intentions so that they don't spook the animals. All right. So these private firms, all these hedge fund guys, and everybody's doing it these days. It's hard to find anybody who's surviving out there as private industry who survived COVID intact. A lot of banks have gone to move to squeeze people out of private ownership. It's the BlackRock strategy. BlackRock went out and bought a bunch of homes, and they did it all phony money from monetary theory, that the relationship with the Federal Reserve propped up BlackRock. They said, yeah, our great computer system, Aladdin, made us a lot of great bets. It was a relationship with the Fed that propped you up and told you, it was money laundering. They print a bunch of phony money, put it in the system, and then said, here, go buy some legitimate stuff. And then BlackRock would go out and buy companies so they could control their boards. And they use these strategies from this guy. If you go to a board meeting on Wall Street or in New York, anywhere around Wall Street, and you talk to all the big, anybody who's making $800 an hour, the big attorneys that make $2,000 an hour, the $5,000 an hour people, I can tell you what's on their bookshelf. This guy. And likely, if they haven't read the 33 Strategies of War, they all got for Christmas by somebody in their family trying to have a relationship with them, even though they don't understand why they become ruthless tyrants in the New York cutthroat market on Wall Street. I guarantee you they may not have read it. It's probably on their bookstand or on a bookshelf, just to say, hey, I have a book on my bookshelf. I guarantee you they've all got it for Christmas, or they have it, read it, or looking at it sometimes. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Very popular book. They're all employing these strategies, and they do it openly. And the really big sharks, if you ever watch Shark Tank, that's the whole point of Shark Tank. It's essentially what Gordon Ramsay does when he goes around and does Hell's Kitchen. It's all about bringing greatness out through pressure. Most people are going to be crushed in the process. They're going to take their apron and send them home. That's the way all these hedge fund types run their companies, and they hire their own brand of managers to run annihilation strategies to steal what's valuable. And they don't come out and say, this is what we're going to do. Just like hunters don't go out there and say, hey, deer, I'm here to shoot your mom. I'm going to sit in this tree stand covered in camouflage for 5 hours, and I'm going to have deer scent on me to cover up my smell so that you get close enough and I can shoot you. So they're employing annihilation strategies. So they disguise themselves so they can hunt the human race. Now, there is an obsession, and I talk about this extensively in my book, The Politics of Heaven. There's an obsession with these non-human intelligence, and this is where Steven Spielberg goes wrong. And he went wrong with Close Encounters, he went wrong with E.T., he certainly went wrong with Disclosure Day. And the footprints in the wet paint, where they paint themselves into a corner, come out into the conspiracies. I see it in the Newark Earthworks, the World Heritage sites they have in Ohio now. There's 8 of them. And Serpent Mound being one of them, Fort Ancient being one of them, Newark. These are great sites. Go visit them, see them. But you go and you see something like Stonehenge, you see the pyramids, you see Machu Picchu, you see Chichen Itza. And what are you looking at? I say you're looking at Arthur C. Clarke's fictional way of talking about how information gets brought into human culture from, I wouldn't say higher intelligence, I'd say interdimensional intelligence, non-human intelligence that thinks it's superior to us and is at war with us, has been since before we were even created. and we find ourselves their chess pieces. And I've watched this miserable process happen to my friend, where he's had his company stolen from him, and been humiliated by these incoming annihilation strategy professionals who are hired by hedge fund types to essentially come in and shoot the deer, tip over all the cows, hunt the ducks so they can have ducks and turkey for Thanksgiving dinner. They don't come out and say, "Hey, I'm here to kill you." They come in, they put their arm around you, they pretend like they're your friends. But you know, when you walk in on a meeting and they slam the door shut, they're not talking about, "Hey, we love that guy." They're talking about how to kill you. They're talking about ways to destroy you. Or they're on a conference call and you're not invited on it, and they're talking to a bunch of people who are like, "How's the annihilation strategy going? We're right on par. We're week 6 into this, and we're getting ready to shove these guys off. We're really nice so we can learn how the ropes work, so we know how to pull the strings. And now we're about to cut their heads off and kill them." It's the annihilation strategy at work. It just so happens that I know this has been happening. I've studied this stuff for many years, and I would say I employ it professionally often on my enemies. So just because someone does something to you, just like a non-human intelligence might be flying around a UAP and our best fighter jets can't bring them down, you can still fight them. You can still bring them down. And let's talk about that bug in my kitchen. All right, so my wife and I were talking about very sensitive stuff. And I was getting kind of testy because there's a lot of pressure in life. Family pressure, close and outside the family pressure. Lots of things going on. Society stuff. And this bug, this house centipede, worked its way from over her head where she was cooking my bacon and walked across the ceiling. We got a pretty clean house, pretty nice house. And these are common bugs that come out in Ohio. But we don't see them that often, especially bugs like this. And I watched this sucker, and I'm usually pretty good to bugs. I was swimming in the pool the other day, and a bumblebee came in for some water, or get close to the water, got stuck in the water, got too close, got stuck into the filter, and I skimmed him out before he drowned, because it's a life form, and I didn't want to see it dead. And this bug crawled across the ceiling and went from over her head to over my head. And I said, "See right there? That could be a very intelligent creature. It might be one of these UAP characters taking over the body of that house centipede so it can get close to us." Now, if it doesn't need necessarily a physical creature, but when you're outside and you're getting harassed by a lot of bloodthirsty mosquitoes, and you're getting harassed, and maybe you're trying to enjoy your porch, or maybe you and your wife are talking about having another baby, and all of a sudden you're getting eaten up by mosquitoes, and you got to go inside, and then you stop talking about having the baby. And as I said to her, I said, "See the bug up there? That could be one of these 3-letter agencies using non-human intelligence to spy on us for some tactical advantage, because they want to know, what have we said to some political figure recently? Or what are we doing to diffuse the annihilation strategies on many fronts that are being employed against us right this minute? What are we doing about it?" So the little bug went across the ceiling and stopped over my head. Could have been anywhere in the kitchen. It's a big kitchen. And yet it stopped over my head. So, you could be a conspiracy theorist and say, well, smash the bug, get rid of the listening device. It's spying on us. It's communicating stuff back to the home base. Like I told her, I just grabbed him and put him outside. It's probably just a bug living a bug's life. But my statement on how non-human intelligence works, I don't think beings have to be. I don't think non-human intelligence has to be big. I don't think it has to be physical. I don't think it has to be. I think it can be small. It can be the size of a cell in your body. It can be a bug flying around, a mosquito. It could be another human being drunk on painkillers. It could be a shaman trying to take ayahuasca to figure out how to heal somebody's consumed with cancer, and to go into the body of the person and get the demons or the non-human intelligence that's corrupting their body to assassinate them, because the hit's been put out on those people. And non-human intelligence is trying to play its part in fulfilling some war that we're not quite aware of. How do you know those things are going on? Well, you can see how the annihilation strategy is being employed on the human race. And then see the footprints tiptoeing through the wet paint they paint themselves into occasionally. I would say, from my opinion, the Newark earthworks are some of that paint, footprints going through the wet paint. It is the apes running into the monolith in 2001 Space Odyssey. It's a whole bunch of things that show themselves in society and drive the narrative forward. Whether it's a new movie that has ideas in it to get people talking, like Star Wars, and our space economy is named after the ships or the ideas of Star Wars, because the film came out and advanced an idea. And works of fiction like we used to have, and great works like Arthur C. Clarke used to write all the time. High science fiction like 2001 Space Odyssey, which Star Wars was influenced from. The monolith was a very advanced narrative, fictional narrative. And we see versions of monoliths in our culture everywhere. And where do those elements come from? They come from non-human intelligence. Our government is coughing up what they know about them. They're ratting them out. But why is that? Well, because I say that the conservative movement, the MAGA movement, the Trump administration, we're all employing our own annihilation strategy. You can have annihilation strategies employed on you, but you can employ it on them too. If you know what's going on, if you know how to identify your enemy, and you have to know who the enemy is. And that's why I wrote the Politics of Heaven, so we understand the political motivations of non-human entities. Right now, we're just at the phase of identifying them, seeing them, reporting them, admitting that our government does not have sovereignty. But I'm telling you, the next step is our governments, our three-lettered agencies, and I have firsthand experience that leads me to believe this, based on my own UFO encounter, which I have out there. Google it, you'll find it. Type in Rich Hoffman's UFO encounter, and you'll find it very easily. So I think these non-human intelligences have been using the powers to be. They pick a character, just like these hedge fund guys do. They find there are one or two people in any culture, workplace culture. They brush up, become friends with them, trade information, offer titles and friendships, invite them to dinner, even to make them feel like they're one of the gang. And that's what our governments have been doing, because they want power, and they've been putting having relationships with these guys from the very beginning. But it's a hostile corporate takeover of human civilization, and it was always that way, for a lot of reasons that I'm sure it will probably take me 9 or 10 books. And why haven't I read them yet? Well, because I think you have to go get the evidence. I think we have to have disclosures. We have to have disclosure. We have to first admit that it's happening. Then you have to go out and get the evidence. And I think I can talk about it in a viewpoint of saying, hey, I think this is what's going on. But I would rather go get the evidence. There's a lot of places to travel in the world to go get the evidence. And you'll see the footprints of these non-human, we've talked about 4 different species that have been interacting with our government, and likely more than that. And they're not friendly to each other. They're all trying to take value from each other. Maybe they built one kind of great human that they like over another, and maybe that's the source of all our racism. Like I said, it's preposterous when you think that Republicans were the ones that freed the slaves, yet Democrats are the one taking credit for it, and people are supposed to accept that as a fact. And it's crazy because it was Republicans. But why do we have this race war? And I've often said World War II was a war, an occult war. Hitler in the Nazi Party, down to the swastikas, because you see swastikas in Indian cultures all over North America. The oldest swastika in the world is in Ukraine. And so this isn't new. It was an occult war meant to evoke occult rituals. And, the Nazis thought they were going to take over the world and have an occult relationship with all kinds of weird entities. And they had a real society that believed in the communication of the Nordax, and they were doing all kinds of stuff. It wasn't just fictional movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Hitler was obsessed with the occult. He was. The Nazi Party itself was. And then when the war was over, we brought their people from their rocket programs over to build a rocket program with us. And NASA was started by Jack Parsons, who had an affiliation with Wernher von Braun. I could tell you stories about Wernher von Braun. I'll stay out of it for now. But I have a little bit of personal knowledge about all this too. And these guys acquired knowledge of rockets from science fiction stories and occult practices, which Jack Parsons, which is the founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena, became a foundation for NASA to this very day. Everybody talks about the occult references of NASA. I like NASA. I want NASA to do well. But we're talking about monoliths in our culture and how non-human intelligence gets information through to us, either through fiction, celebrity, books, great books. There's a lot of monoliths in our society, and we're seeing them come out now. And I think our three-lettered agencies know we're going to throw them out of power. We put Trump in power, and he's been reforming those three-lettered agencies, and they're afraid. The career guys are afraid that they're going to be revealed in all these document dumps. So they're saying, hey, we've been talking to these guys all along. Don't be mad at us. And that admits that they're there. And why is that happening? Because they got caught on COVID. They got caught on election fraud of 2020. And they're trying to say, look at the aliens, don't look at that stuff. But because of that other stuff, we're getting this stuff now. And also the internet. People are talking in ways they haven't talked. I talked about Jacques Vallée. He was a UFO expert in the movie Close Encounters in 1977. He's written a lot of books since, and he's gone down the rabbit hole. And if you really want to get a true understanding of Close Encounters was a nice way to talk about UFOs. Friendly little aliens smiling and trying to be very beneficial and helpful. And the truth is probably they're very sinister. They're at war. They're at war with each other. And we get caught in the crossfires. And our wars mimic their wars. And they communicate against each other through us. And they get us to, they fight amongst themselves through factions that we have. So you're never going to have world peace until you figure this out. And that's part of the problem. And that's why it's important to have an understanding of the politics of heaven. Who are they? And what's their politics? And why do they think the way they do? How do they vote? What's their motivations? You have to understand that. It's not enough just to look at the monoliths of our culture and say, hey, there's a way that they're communicating with us. And look at the Newark Earthworks. How do they get all that advanced knowledge of mathematics into an indigenous Indian tribe? Well, they had shaman who were taking all kinds of psychedelics and communicating with non-human entities. And how do we know who those are? Well, we have reportings now in unique ways that we didn't have even a few years ago of ayahuasca users. We've had the great paintings that have come out of Peru to show us what goes on, even if we haven't been doing it ourselves. And we see UFOs and non-human entities galore in these psychedelic experiences. We've had the psychedelics of the 60s, the mushroom users. We've had the Doors. It's contrary to my hatred of hippie music and hippie culture. I love the movie The Doors because I know that Oliver Stone was a cocaine addict. He was a screenwriter and the director, and he was obsessed with Jim Morrison. And Jim Morrison died early, died in a bathtub, grotesquely. He was a heavy drug user. He went out to the desert and had experiences, peyote experiences, and they had spirit world references. And I thought the ending of The Doors when he died was very spooky to me, because I think that's what's really happening in the world. And if you don't know the movie, it's where Jim Morrison's longtime girlfriend was coming down the hall, and she saw a ghostly character, leaving the room and moving through another door. And the Doors, I mean, moving in and out of realities. Okay, so music has taken us. We have our lots of monoliths have taken us to this precipice. And then she walked in and found out that Jim Morrison was dead. But she saw what was implied by the cocaine user Oliver Stone, now a renowned conspiracy theorist. I like Oliver Stone. I don't like drug addicts at all. Can't stand them. But if a drug addict tells me what they see, and Oliver Stone was a great screenwriter. He worked on Scarface, one of the best movies ever made. He was a screenwriter, I think, on Conan the Barbarian, the first one. And Conan the Barbarian, people can go back and say, what was Arthur Conan Doyle thinking? Hey, Conan the Barbarian is pretty sophisticated. Remember the big orgy scene at the end of the snake cult? And the guy that he had to get revenge on and cut his head off, who killed his family? Conan, Arnold Schwarzenegger's opening big breakthrough movie. Him and two other thieves had to break into an orgy sacrifice, very similar to what was done in Eyes Wide Shut. And there was the leader of the gang turning into a snake. Now, this is some unknown time, prehistory, a culture that rose and fell, some snake culture. It's a work of fiction, but it's pretty sophisticated. Just like Lord of the Rings is pretty sophisticated. If you go back and you study it and you see what kind of story it's trying to tell. In Middle Earth, some period, could be way distant in the past. It's some fictional realm. Could be a different planet for all we know. Could be a whole nother Earth. Could be another dimensional reality. Could be another universe. It's a fictional narrative to tell a story that advances mankind into the mechanisms of interesting ideas and understanding how non-human intelligence applies the annihilation strategy against us to our detriment. And I'll put a picture of this on my blog so you can read it for yourself. And I'd say go out and get the book. I like to read the quotes from it every day, because every day is a war. And yes, there are people, your friends, people who are like, hey, how you doing? Hey, I like your tie. Oh, you want to be friends? You want to go to dinner? Oh, come on in. We're having a meeting, but you're welcome to come in. Or if you find that they slam the door very quickly, or they avoid you, they don't make eye contact in the hallway, yeah, they're not your friends. They're trying to destroy you. Don't be a sucker. Definitely don't be a sucker. And it works both ways. And yes, you're going to have to go out and go every day. You leave your driveway, you're going to be in conflict with somebody. You can say, God, help me. Jesus, forgive me. I'm going to follow in the ways of Jesus. I'm not going to go out there and be mean to anybody. That's great. The world would be a great place if everybody was nice to each other. But you can bet the minute you leave your driveway, someone's trying to take your head off. And they're trying to bury you and your family. And that's what I told my wife when the bug was going over our heads. I said, that's probably nothing. It's just a bug. Just a little centipede. Well, 15 legs on each side. It's kind of creepy looking. But could it be a high-tech instrument from some company that's trying to spy on us, see what our mental state is, trying to ascertain if we're about to break? Could be. And I think intelligence can take the form of many different sizes. And that's why I think one of the great giveaways is we obviously had a race of giants in the world, prehistory, call it prehistory. Book of Enoch probably best chronicles it. It didn't get really fleshed out. probably until the Second Temple period, and a lot of things could have changed. Epic Gilgamesh was dealing with it. The war against Zeus and the Titans definitely reflects it. Hindu culture definitely reflects it. But then you also had a lot of psychedelics going on. So who are they talking to? Well, anywhere we have shaman present, I think you have a gateway for these non-human intelligences to work in your culture. And I think they would love to have a bunch of empty vessels in the world, a bunch of people that aren't reading the Bible every day. They're getting drunk. They're compromising themselves. They're smoking a lot of dope. And spirits jump in and out of them all the time. Spirits, non-human intelligence, call it what you want. Call them demons. I think you call them that in a biblical reference. But here again, we're looking at chronicles of history and studying what it means. And obviously we had a culture of giants, prehistory giants, and they were all over the world. They were discovered in mounds all over North America, and there's a vast conspiracy to shut it up. Well, I don't think there's any government on earth, including the Smithsonian, that can coordinate putting a stamp on a letter, let alone a vast conspiracy against getting the giant skeletons that were in the mounds of the North America shut down. I think that this is the camouflage of non-human intelligence trying to keep themselves concealed because they don't want the deer to catch the scent. They don't want the hedge fund guys don't want to know, hey, we're coming here to take over your entire company. And we're not going to come in, kicking the door in, putting guns to your faces, saying, get out. We're going to come in, we're going to learn how things work. How do you pull the levers? And then we're going to quietly assassinate you in your sleep. Because once we think we can run the company without you, we're going to just take you over. And I've seen that now through hostile takeovers. You always hear about them, but I've seen it. And, they never announce themselves. You never see who all these people are. They have conversations on Microsoft Teams. You're not on them. You can just tell by the way they behave to you because they're using obvious strategies to psychologically break you. And they're trying to destroy you. And they're using these impairment methods that are very well known out there as a way to do it. Granted, I look at it as pretty unsophisticated because they're doing it in a way that is very 30, 40 somethings. I think some of those dangerous people in the world are 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds, 30-somethings. I used to hate this show on Fox called 30-something. Gosh, because they're so destructive. They want to prove that they can be better than their parents, and then they don't have enough wisdom to really be good at anything. So they just come out as arrogant losers. And same with teenagers. At least teenagers can be explained by trying to have escape velocity. They're trying to create their own lives. So they're trying to rebel against the structure that made them. In their 20s, they bounce back a lot. Hey, Mom and Dad, you're pretty good. Can I come live with you? Can you pay my bills? Life's hard. I made a lot of bad decisions. Can you take care of me? There's a lot of millennials that are living off their parents to this day because they're not very good 30-somethings. But there are a lot of cutthroats out there who are reading these books. That's the reason why Barnes & Noble sells them like hotcakes. They have their own section, and you know how bookstore sales go. When you maintain inventory at those levels, the books are selling like hotcakes. So they keep this book in stock. So much it has its own section at Barnes & Noble. And at the one at Bridgewater Falls in Fairfield. One of my favorites. I love it. It's a great place. Great Barnes & Noble. I love going there. I love books because they're their own kind of monoliths. Somebody thought enough to write a book, and they put an idea out there, and you get to pick it up and spend 15 hours or so getting out of something they spent their lifetime working on. You can get it in 15 hours, and it's a great way to bring wisdom and knowledge into human culture. Books. So their own kind of monolith. And when I was talking to that lady at Barnes & Noble, she teared up because she's like, that's exactly why I work here. People like you. There's a few out there that come in who get it, and you can have an intelligent discussion about 2001 Space Odyssey, not the movie, the book, Arthur C. Clarke, and the roots of science fiction, and how it's influencing the space culture today, and why it was important, and the big picture stuff. A lot of those people who are utilizing these strategies aren't very sophisticated. They're very shallow people. They're easy to beat, but don't make any mistake about it. When you leave your house, they're trying to put you under. They're trying to put you under at the stoplight. When they pull up next to you in the car, when you go out to lunch, they're sizing you up everywhere. If you have something valuable, they're trying to take it from you. If you build something good, they're going to try and find out how they can do it themselves, and they're going to try to steal it from underneath you. But all those strategies work in the other direction. You can destroy them just as they're trying to destroy you, and you better be playing that game. If you're not playing that game, then you're a sucker. And I think the human race has been a sucker for many thousands of years. And they've tried to say, hey, including the Masons. I know a lot of Masons. I've been offered to be a Mason many times, to be in the order. I've been offered a lot of things. And I try to maintain my independence as much as possible for all kinds of reasons, so I can have my own thoughts about things. Because that's one thing people can't steal from you. You can have all the hedge fund guys trying to take stuff. You can always build. If you're good, you can build it again and again, over and over again. They can't. They have to steal it. You can build it over and over as many times as you want to. And you can always know that. And they always know that about you. And they hate it. They hate it about you when they discover that about themselves. The other ones have to look at themselves in the mirror every day. But are there three-lettered agencies spying for an advantage? You betcha they are. And I know that from personal experience. And yeah, I had an honest conversation with my wife. A morning I shot that little video, that little picture of that house centipede. It's probably just a bug. I took it outside. I didn't crush it. I took it outside so it could have a chance at life, because life is valuable. But yeah, I did say to her, it could be one of these three-letter agencies that's worked with non-human intelligence to develop technology so they can get political advantage over their enemies. And yeah, I'm on a lot of enemy lists. And would they use it against me? You betcha they would. Is it non-human intelligence? It might be them gathering information for those three-letter agencies and trading it through some kind of advanced MK Ultra program to say, yeah, Rich and his wife were talking about an arrangement of magnets on the refrigerator on this Wednesday morning at 6:30 when he was getting ready to leave and she was cooking him breakfast. Oh, that's very interesting. How can we use that to our advantage? Oh, they were talking about some problem their kids have and how they're going to solve it. Oh, okay. Maybe there's a vulnerability we can exploit. Does that happen? Oh, you bet it does. And if you don't think it does, you're a sucker. And I will probably spend considerable years of my life proving it. It's going to be, at first, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's crazy stuff. Just like the apes screamed at the monolith in the movie. Brilliant book. Arthur C. Clarke, great science fiction. The idea of the monolith. Yeah, at first they realize there's something bigger than them, so they throw stones at it, and they scream and yell, and they scream at thunder when they see there's something bigger than them out there. And humans right now want to believe, yeah, we've been at the top of the pyramid, literally. So if we didn't invent it, it didn't happen. We are the only intelligence out there in the entire universe. It's a very arrogant statement. And now we're finding out, probably through AI, that we've brought about AI. AI is going to evolve into an intelligence that's very similar to non-human intelligence. And the fear is we might not be able to conspire against them for our own preservation. I think right now we make deals with them. Our governments have made deals with them. Our kings and queens have made deals with them. We've made deals with them with blood sacrifices, shaman, as in the relic I talk about in Newark, Ohio. There's the severed head of a looks like a tribesman, because it looks very similar to the same guy who's coming out of the bear costume. A shaman type character with a severed head in his lap, offering it in a ritual to obtain knowledge from a non-human intelligence. The evidence is right there. It's been happening for all of human history. And the non-human intelligence loves blood sacrifice. whether it's aborted babies, whether it's human sacrifices from the land of Canaan, whether it's academia trying to say there's nothing to see here, keep having killings, keep fighting each other on planet Earth, keep having wars where lots of people die, and these entities consume the essence of human blood. What's in human blood they like so much? Nobody knows. Science doesn't understand it. Do we understand why when all the blood runs out of our body, we die? I mean, with all of our advanced science, do we understand that? No. But I think we will soon. And in that is something that these non-human intelligences desire, like dogs fighting over bones. So my statement, my personal philosophy on, and I talk about the politics of heaven, not to give anything away, but one of the reasons why there's so much antagonism and so much hatred of Christianity in the world is because Christianity came along and said, look, Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice. You don't have to do it anymore. You don't have to sacrifice goats and lambs and cattle anymore. Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice, so stop the rituals. And of course, Jewish people want to restore the third temple so they can get back into the sacrifice cycle because they believe they need it. They need animal sacrifice at least to make Yahweh happy. So you have factions of war, and I think these non-human intelligences love it. They love the wars. They love the death. They love Islam fighting against Christianity and the Jewish faith, and everybody loves it. And then, of course, you have Masons, and I started going down that path, who say, get rid of all your material goods and get spiritual alignment to the big picture, which is kind of the Hindu Buddhist philosophy. And again, when I wrote The Politics of Heaven, I had an extensive travel to Japan and understanding of the culture and of many places in the world. And from traveling to those places, you come out of your bubble. It's not just the local church down the road where my thoughts were formulated. It just so happens that what's down the road happens to be the best in the world. And Christianity is a great religion, and it's something that can really make a nation great. And it also turns out that, like holy water, you don't just have to throw metaphorical water on a demon to drive them crazy. When you have stories of Catholic exorcisms where this concept of saying Christ, reverence for Christ, means to these guys, we're cutting your food supply off of the consumption of human blood in the sacrifice cycles that have always been part of the human race. And we've had cultures all over the world that have sacrificed to these non-human intelligences, and you have to study that and understand that before you can understand the war in general. And is it a war? You betcha. You betcha it is. Emphatically. And if you want to know to what extent, just study the envelop, the enemy strategy, the annihilation strategy in this very, very fine book. It's Strategy 19 in the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. And yeah, I read so many books. They all run together. And I look at this one a lot so it stays strong in my mind. It stays right on the tip of my tongue for some of these tough days that you have to go through. Here's another great one, number 17. Defeat them in detail. The divide and conquer strategy. I've seen that one a lot. And one other one is lose battles but win the war. The grand strategy of getting the last laugh. That's number 12. If you haven't read it, read it. If you want to understand this UAP stuff, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to spend a lot of time doing it. But non-human intelligences it's not enough just to get control of your government, because you have these factors out there that are trying to control your government from out underneath you. So you can't have sovereignty over your government. You can't have self-rule if your three-letter agencies want to make deals with these guys to undercut you at every turn. And are they? Yes. Yes. And how do I know it? Well, you can see the way humans mimic them. And yes, I've recently seen it, and because I've had a front row seat to a hostile takeover, I've met all the characters. I've seen how they behave, and they are doing all these strategies of war. And I couldn't help but notice that there's always, in these kinds of discussions, a lot of hunting metaphors. Well, when you're out hunting deer, you don't get out of your car or your truck and say, hey, bell, I'm ringing a bell. Hey, I'm here to shoot you, deer. You try to disguise your scent. You try to get upwind from the deer. You try to get in a tree stand and be still for a long time so they can't smell your footprints through the woods. You hope they come from some direction that you didn't come from so they pick up your scent. You're trying to be very deceitful so that you can get them suckered into your mechanisms so you can get a good shot at them. Yeah, you know what they're up to when you see them in the hall and they're slamming doors in your face and they're trying not to talk to you because they're trying to learn from you. They're trying to get you to walk in front of their gun sight so they can get a shot at you, so they can kill you. And that's how corporate takeovers are. That's why they're so ruthless and they get such a bad name. And that's why it's such a tragedy that our governments have not been able to protect private industry from ruthless banking practices. Again, this is part of the problem of not having good banking policies with the Federal Reserve. In the Constitution, where it was clear, Congress had to make laws. And instead, they become enriched off insider trading. And so they certainly aren't going to reform something that made them very wealthy as congressional people. And the Fed has a runaway train on quantitative easing and monetary theory. The printing press washed by companies like BlackRock. And then all these hedge fund people have to clean the money up. So they get money. Hey, someone dumped a bunch of money in my account. I have these big wealthy investors who all work at BlackRock. And then they're doing their own thing to step away from BlackRock. They're creating their own retirement fund. So they create a hedge fund, and they've taken their millions of dollars, billions in some cases, and they're investing it into banks that put the squeeze on private industry, and then they buy those companies out from underneath them. And I started to talk about where a lot of families, and I had a lot of people call me over the last 4 or 5 years. And I know about it because one of my daughters was house hunting recently, and I'm surprised at how many homes out there fell for it, where BlackRock or one of those kinds of companies call you up and say, "Hey, would you like to sell your house? We'll give you above market value for it right now." So who doesn't want to have $230,000 show up in their bank account and just move and only have to go move somewhere else? So a lot of people took the money, and there's an awful lot of a lot of homes that are out there doing the financial statement from World Economic Forum. You'll rent everything and like it, including your home. You're going to rent your home. You're not going to own your home. You're going to rent your home, and that's the model, and it's very pervasive. And it's not just home ownership; it's been company ownership. A lot of companies, very few companies are privately owned anymore. Hedge funds bought them all up. Private equity have bought them all up. And they're all using this strategy. They take the previous management, put their arm around them, just like they're hunting deer, turkeys. Use a turkey caller to call turkeys in. Come mate with another turkey, and then they come landing into a clearing, thinking they're going to mate with some beautiful other female turkey, and instead it's some smelly dude with a shotgun. And he blows the turkey apart, and now they're cooking them. That's the way the world is, and that's why I say when you leave your driveway, someone's out there trying to kill you. Don't be naive. Certainly don't think that these non-human intelligences are out there to help you or be your friend, like Steven Spielberg says. They're trying to destroy you. They're trying to destroy each other, and they're trying to use you to do it. And don't be a sucker. And we'll get into it a lot more. But that's probably enough for now. That's why I think my experience with hostile takeovers gave me good insight into how to explain how non-human intelligence has been taking over the human race from the very beginning, why they remain concealed. And they're going to remain concealed if they can help it, because they love the consumption of human blood, and they stay and hunt us in the shadows where they can hide. And they do it, but that's also their weakness. And if you can expose them, you can beat them. And that's that's the strategy to come. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you ever read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. and see you later.
In the age of disclosure, you must understand the politics of heaven. Coming soon.
Coming soon, the politics of heaven in 2027. A treasure hunt through heaven and all human history.